Hello, welcome to Central Florida Salute. I'm your host, Bob Peters, and with me today is a Navy veteran, is Doug Yoder. How you say that?
Yes.
Yoder. And he's a Vietnam veteran. He's also a trustee here at the Eagles, 4273, and an all-around good guy for the most part.
I like the most part.
Yeah. So, Doug, talk to me a little bit. Where are you from originally?
I'm originally from 32 miles northeast of Cleveland, Ohio. And right on the Lake Erie. A small little town, actually the fourth largest Amish community in the United States.
That's right. You told me your family was Amish.
My grandparents were. My dad was actually drafted in the Korean War, and they're conscientious ejectors. So most of them go to hospitals to work, but my dad told his father that he felt that he had to go, and I get choked up about it. And my grandfather basically said, well, if you end up in Korea, you'll be shunned from the church. Well, my dad was in the front lines.
And he got shunned from the church. Well,
for 7 years, and then my grandfather left the Amish church and started a Mennonite church. And he had already lost 4 boys to the war, and
your grandfather
my grandfather did, and decided that enough was enough, and he left the Amish church so he could be with the other 3 boys that were still living.
Yeah, and they're Mennonite.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. You want to tell our audience a little bit about the difference between
the Amish
two?
And the Mennonite?
Yeah.
Sure. The Amish, as you know, and even though my grandfather went to the Mennonites, the Mennonites drive cars. My grandfather still kept his horse and buggy till the day he died. They didn't have electricity, although the Mennonites do, and they're more a reformed, whereas the Amish is a pretty strict religion. The Mennonites loosened up a lot of the rules as far as cars, electricity,
clothing, right?
Clothing, big time. Although my grandfather, to the end, still wore his Amish clothes, but he stuck with it. I mean,
yeah. So you graduated high school, I'm assuming.
I did. I graduated Cardinal High School.
And you're around the same age as me, I do believe. And there's that thing called the draft and everything.
Draft.
Remember that?
Got a great story.
Oh, I'm ready to hear it. I know you got a couple of great stories. The chicken one is my favorite one.
As you know, the draft ended in I believe, March of '73. While in '72, my number was 66. And my dad, since he was in Korea, goes, whatever you're going to do, you're not going over there to dodge bullets in Vietnam. So I suggest you go to the Air Force or the Navy. And the Navy had a delayed program, a 6-month delayed program.
Mm-hmm. So
I went and had a 6-month delay. Went in January then. And in March, they stopped the draft and only drafted up to number 50.
Darn.
So, off to boot camp in Great Lakes, Chicago. I'm supposed to be going to radioman school. After that, so we did our basic training, and everybody was getting their orders. And I knew I was going to radioman school, but they handed me my orders and says, you're going to the Hancock CBA 19. And I said, well, where's that? And they go, it's 3 days pulling out in Vietnam. You're pulling out of San Diego.
So the Hancock was a ship.
Hancock was the ship. So I was getting on what they called training on the ship, and then come back and finish my radioman school. So on the way there, since I was the youngest and being trained as a radioman, they had lost a couple riverboats and the crew. So they basically asked for volunteers. And one thing my dad did teach me:
never volunteer.
Never volunteer. Well, the chief volunteered me because I was the youngest.
Yeah.
So I actually, when we got there, flew by helicopter and was on what they call the 1054 riverboats. We were tracking places we weren't supposed to be. or according to a lot of people, we were never there.
Yeah.
From a Cambodia standpoint and things, and we were actually trekking the Rouge and the North Vietnamese, and that's what I did for 86 days.
How many are on the crew?
Well, we had 7 of us, and then we actually had assigned 6 SEALs, and what they were doing was we would drop them off at sunset, and we would pick them back up at dawn in designated areas. And at 19, that was quite an experience for the 86 days. I can tell you a few things. They would come back, we'd pick them up, and they'd give us coordinates, and I was radioing it in. There were a few nights that were pretty crazy. One of the things that the Khmer Rouge and the North Vietnamese would send their food supplies down the rivers. One night, our gunner got sick, and my chief designated me on the 50 caliber. He goes, "You know how to use it?" I said, "Sure, just pull the trigger."
Yeah.
Well, the coxsman, it's about 1 o'clock in the morning, and the boat coxsman basically said we had a 20 degrees starboard, a boat coming down, and so I held onto the trigger. And I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but the boat would literally move 2 to 3 feet backwards in the waters and things. And I probably let off 100 shells. The chief comes running up, yelling and screaming, "Shut it down, shut it down." And about that time, I could feel a bunch of what I thought were body parts coming on us. And I said, "Chief, I got him. And he goes, "Well, look down, because all they are is feathers. And if I shit feathers for the next 3 days, you're going overboard." And basically, it was about 1,000 chickens. We got up.
You don't get credit for those, you know.
Unfortunately, I got up the next morning, and there was probably about 5 inches of feathers all over this boat. So that's about as close as I got. The SEALs guys were unique. I mean, they never really talked to us, Bob. We would pick them up in the mornings, and they would basically sit in the back of the boat and not say a word to any of us, and just whatever meditation, whatever. I mean, they were just no nonsense.
We did a show with Pete Peterson, who was SEAL Team 2.
Oh yeah.
And he went back like 40 years later, I think it was 40 years later, and found his interpreter. You know, because they had to leave when Vietnam ended, and the whole team felt guilty about leaving this guy behind.
Sure.
Because when they leave him behind like that, they either kill them,
yeah, or
they send him to re-education camps.
Yes, they do.
Which is, you know, well, they sent him to a re-education camp, but it didn't work. He really still. But they found him, and they went back and they helped him out, and it's quite a story.
That's amazing. We had one on our boat also.
Yeah, it was a movie. They made a movie out of it, and I'm trying to think of the name of it. But yeah, they're quite the group.
They are. One night, our SEALs group brought back a Khmer Rouge, and our interpreter was trying to talk to him and get information and stuff, and he was not too cooperative. So we tied him up basically, and our chief goes full speed ahead. About 45 minutes of skipping like a rock on the water, we bring him back in. She still didn't want to talk, so another 10 minutes out in the water, we brought him back in, and he sung like a canary. So that's about what I went through. I mean, I was very fortunate. And then I got back, and they shipped me to radioman school. I got done with that, went back to the Hancock, and we had Eagle Landing Operation, it was called, and it was the evacuation of Saigon in '75. I think it
Yeah,
was
you
April
were telling me
29th and
about that.
30th.
That's an interesting. Tell us about the events and all that.
We actually were literally the last ship out.
When you say ship, you mean helicopter.
Well, we didn't leave with a lot of helicopters. We were throwing them overboard. Yes, the helicopters were on our ship, and they were flying over to the embassy, and we were picking up military personnel and embassy personnel. And I know most of the people know. Anybody that worked at the embassy, whether they were South Vietnamese, they were going to be executed, as you said, or so we put as many as we could on the ship. I think I probably had the last contact with the last 2 Marines that were still at the embassy. And the last helicopter out, I said, if you're not on it, we're out. And they came back basically saying, we're not done. And I believe if you look back, I think it was either 2 years or 3 years ago, those 2 bodies were shipped back here to the United States. So they were basically, but we loaded everybody up. I was having one of the first hour of the evacuation. Of course, everybody was loading up the helicopters and hanging on as they're lifting off. And I had one of the pilots say there was like 5 or 6 of them hanging
on the struts.
On the struts, and asked us what to do, and basically said, "Go over to bay and drop them, shake them." And they did that. They were dropping like ants. And that was basically it for me and my Vietnam experience.
That's enough.
We came back. I'll never forget. That was the sad part. Pulling to San Diego, a lot of demonstrations.
Yeah, we didn't. Yeah, everybody knows we didn't get the best homecoming.
Nah, we didn't. But I will say, when I did get out, I mean, they paid my college. I had a VA home loans. I obviously have free medical for life. It was an okay experience. The last year and a half of my experience, I was assigned to a Commodore on the East Coast on the USS Raleigh, LPD-1, and we swept the Suez Canal, first ship in 11 years. We actually evacuated.
Tell the people when you say how did you say it? You
swept the Suez Canal.
You let people know what you're talking about when you swept.
Sure. Israel and the Suez Canal was closed for 11 years. There wasn't a ship that went down it. And that was because there were so many mines put in this Suez Canal over the years. So we had minesweepers with us, and we had the helicopters. And the helicopters would have the sonar and sweeping. We actually pulled up mines that were World War I.
Wow.
Which was crazy.
Yeah.
But that took us about 25 days. And we just pulled up all kinds of mines, cleared it, and then started letting the commercial ships and boats start going down. But it was actually closed for 11 years. My last part was evacuating Beirut. I don't know if you know much about Beirut.
I don't know.
And I know I'm getting off the subject a little. But Beirut at one time was the Monte Carlo of the Middle East. The gambling casinos. It was beautiful. And then, as you know, the conflicts with Israel and the Palestinians. That we actually went in. We had to wear our civilian clothes. We came in with Mike 8 boats and loaded them up. the place was totally pretty much bombed out.
What kind of boats did you say?
Mike 8 boats is what
Now,
we call them.
explain that.
Sure. The USS Raleigh was an amphibious vessel where the ship would literally sink in the back, and we had like 10, if you remember Normandy and the boats that would hit the beach,
Yeah.
and drop the front ends.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what it was back then, but ours were Mike 8 boats. And we pulled in. I was the first one in that too. I don't know why I was always the first, but we pulled in, and interesting story, which we didn't know at the time, but we had to wear our civilian clothes. We couldn't have any U.S. flags flying, or anything that let us know that we were the United States Navy and we were coming in to evacuate people. So I think we took out 4,200, but we're being the first boat in, we're coming into the docks, and it's pretty crazy. And all I remember was hearing pops, and I remember that sound. And so I dove into the front of the Mike 8 boat because I was on the top with the coxswain with the radio. And the next thing I know, this guy jumps like right on top of me, and I look up, and there's a guy that I could have sworn was right out of the cartel. Obviously, later it was a PLO, and the guy that jumped on me was from CBS, and he was filming, and he blew the camera right out of his hands, and basically said no cameras. And of course, I'm getting all kinds of messages. What's going on? What's going on? You know, I still have the scar. I had 24 stitches in the knee when I dove in. But I'll never forget the very first civilian that we loaded on the boat. He goes, "Where do I park my Mercedes?" I said, "Excuse me?"
Where do I park my Mercedes?
My Mercedes. And he had a wife and 2 kids.
Yeah.
I said, "Are you crazy?" I said, "Just get on the boat. We're out of here, okay? And we're not coming back." And he says to his wife, "You guys get on the boat." He goes, I believe he worked for a petroleum company at the time, which was big over there, as you know. And he says, "I'm making too much money a day, and I'm not going." I said, "Well, you need to understand, we're not coming back."
It's not an option.
But he stayed. And then, of course, we had taken all what we could take. And then about 3 months later, I was already back on stateside. Some more amphibious boats were sent over, and they finished evacuating Beirut at that time.
No idea if this guy ever made it out.
Never know.
Never know. Yeah. Well, he may be riding around in his Mercedes.
He may be.
Yeah,
I
who
mean,
knows? Yeah.
But that's basically my career in the Navy. I mean, I was very fortunate. And at 19, you grow up pretty fast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you were how many years in the Navy?
4.
4 years.
I did my 4 years, and they wanted. I was in a billet that there wasn't a lot of people in the radio.
Yeah.
And they in 1977 they offered me $3,000 and stationed in Hawaii for a year. Right, and I go, wow. I go, well, what about the other 3 years? And they go, well, you can go back on the boats. And I go, I'm out.
Yeah.
So that was basically my story, and here I am today. My parents moved down here 45 years ago, so I got to visit a lot. After the service, I actually went into the electronics, computer chips. I was very lucky there and had a marvelous career. For 20
So you
years.
got right in on the beginning of that. So that's when
The very beginning.
Oh.
Actually got to meet Steve Jobs. Actually had lunch with him every 3 months for about 5-6 years.
Wow.
And we would negotiate prices because we were in the DRAMs, memory products, and we were Apple's largest supplier at the time. So, good guy, a lot of fun, a great career. I started basically in the warehouse, and in the last 15 years, I was their VP of sales.
Wow, you
So,
got right on up.
I did. I was lucky.
You said
right
you
place
used
at the right time.
Yeah, you were the first. Yeah. But you got to the GI Bill. You got your,
I got
your
Kent
education.
State. Yep, got my
Yeah.
education from Kent State. Oh yeah, they've treated me great, and from what you read about all the horror stories and things, but guys coming back and things,
Well, yeah, they say life is a journey.
yeah.
A lot of guys had some issues.
Oh yeah.
I mean, when I came back, I saw some of those people too. But basically, I would fly in, and first thing I would do is go into the men's room, get out of my uniform, put my civvies on.
Oh yeah.
So they wouldn't bother you.
Sure.
But that's then, and this is now, and
Yeah.
we have to think and support our military that's out there now. I mean, they're amazing young men and women.
They really are.
And
They really are.
so, but you work here as a trustee. I mean, well, you volunteer as a trustee. Well, I mean that in the proper sense that we don't pay you.
Oh yeah. That's
You're
true.
a volunteer, and we had Walter. He was another one that worked here as a trustee.
Yeah, Walter was great.
Yeah, he's.
We miss him in the trustees a lot.
Yeah, we had a nice interview with him. But I want to thank you for coming on.
My
I
pleasure.
didn't really think you were going to go with the chicken story. I've known you I've known you for a while.
I don't understand the chickens, where the chickens were. How do you?
The chickens were in a boat that was hollowed out, okay? And that's how they shipped their food down the river, okay? They were alive, obviously,
At one time.
at one time. And then they would ship their food supplies in these hollowed out boats. And then every once in a while, it never happened to us, I believe, they would actually hide in the bottom of the boats and then fill the boats up with chickens. And that's how they got down the river or past our people and our boys and girls. So that was a chicken story. Everybody, when I came home, they go, "Hey, Doug, did you?"
So
I go, "Yeah, I got 1,000 chickens."
Now we know why there's a chicken shortage in Vietnam, because Doug was there.
There it is. Bob, I appreciate what you do. I appreciate what you do with the Eagles.
And I want to thank you for your support of Central Florida Salute YouTube.
Thank you, sir.
We are a not-for-profit, and we count on companies and people to help us go and preserve history, educate young people, and honor our service to our military. So I want to thank you for your support of us.
All right.
And put that down, just because this is where we say goodbye in the show.
Oh, okay.
And I want to follow my lead, because I don't know how many of the shows you've seen. But,
I apologize. I haven't been able to do that yet.
okay, well, follow my lead.
Okay.
This is how we say goodbye. To all our veterans out there, our active military and their families, we salute you for all you do. Till next time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, brother. Welcome home.
Thank you. You